Happy Friday. We are wrapping up another week of our Deuteronomy Bible reading plan, still smack dab in the middle of the laws governing how Israel is called to worship God and love their neighbor. And today we read about, in chapter 18, two of Israel's spiritual leaders. So yesterday we read about their social leader, the king. Today we're reading laws that govern their spiritual leaders, in particular two, priests and prophets. And in this video, I want to center in on the first of those, the priests, because I think the structure for this is kind of interesting. The priests of Israel were pulled from one specific tribe, the Levites. So of the 12 tribes of Israel, the only people who could serve as priests, as mediators of God's presence to the rest of Israel and the rest of the nations around them, were the Levites, one particular tribe. And part of being a priest, right, great responsibility, great privilege to be a priest, comes with a lot of stipulations. So, for example, you couldn't own land, and everything that you had would be because of the generosity of your fellow peers. In other words, the food you ate, the land that you are operating on, anything that you use to support yourself, to live, all of that comes if the people around you are being faithful to God, because this law governs how they're called to give to you out of generosity, but then it also says how the Levites are called to live too. And I love this principle in leadership. In the email, I talked about how over the past few weeks, I got to tour some of the most incredible churches in the world. Beautiful, ornate, gold-laden churches. And I can't help but think about this leadership principle that Deuteronomy lays out for us. What does it look like to have a church leadership system that is 100% dependent upon the generosity of other people? In a large part, we do have that today. Everything that we have as a church leadership, our staff, our building, all of it, is because of the generosity of people just like you. But that generosity, when you give, there's an understanding that what we're going to do with it is transform lives. Through your generosity, lives are transformed. Under no circumstances is the generosity of the people of Israel, and I would say arguably the same about us today, meant to be used in a way to simply prop up the Levite tribe. So for example, they're not allowed to own land. In the ancient world, and again, still today, land is one of the primary things that denotes wealth and power and status. In the ancient world, the more land you own, the more power you had. You could collect taxes on that land, you could sell that land. It's an investment. The more land you had, the more powerful you were. And so in this model of leadership, God creates a ruling class of priests who are actually powerless to some degree. And think about that for a moment. In all of church history, we've not operated in this. I'm not saying that we're like this today, but there have definitely been seasons of church history where the generosity of people, the gifts given to the church, or even just how the church operates in general, was set up to prop up the church as an authority or a power system. And right in the heart of Deuteronomy, what we see is that God's heart for the rulers of his church, and I would even say that word rulers is probably not the best word, the servants of his church, is just that they would be servants, that every day, everything they had, every part of their life existed because of the love and generosity of others. The words that Deuteronomy uses in verse 2, they shall have no inheritance among their brothers, no land. The Lord is their inheritance. God created a system where there would be no doubt who they were dependent on. They were dependent upon the love of God and the love of others to sustain them. And you can interpret that or even extrapolate that as if they were doing their job, leading the people toward faithfulness, mediating God's blessing, and then the people would be faithful, well, then they would be blessed in return. It's like this nice little feedback loop, right? But I just think that's such a beautiful picture of leadership. And not all of us are called to be priests. Not all of you watching this are called to be priests. But what would it look like to view whatever leadership role you have? And make no mistake, all of us have a role in leadership, whether it's one person you lead in your family or whether it's a whole corporation or something in between. All of us are leading somewhere, someone. What would it look like to view your leadership in these terms? If you were using the people around you not to prop yourself up, to make more money, to make more resources, more power or authority for yourself, but what if you saw yourself as a blessing to those people? What if you pictured your role as a leader as mediating blessing onto the people around you, inspiring generosity and love in them so that they would then go and bless not just you in return, but all of the people around you? What would it look like to view your leadership not as a place of domination or authority or power, but blessing? And I think that the system God created then would mean that you would be blessed in return. Because that's exactly what we see with the Levites. Their role is not to hoard resources for themselves. It is a role that is dependent every day upon the blessings of God and the blessings of their fellow man. So I think we should look to be leaders of the same ilk. No matter where you lead, no matter who you lead, spend a little time reflecting on this today. How do you see this same charge in your life? And what would it look like to view your leadership as being a servant of the people around you, not the other way where they're serving you? Hope you're enjoying this. We'll see you back next week.